Well, let's now return to our top story, those elections in Germany. Let's now bring in Sudha David-Wilp. She is the Deputy Director of the Berlin office at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. She joins us now from Berlin. Sudha, obviously, the rest of the world is watching these polls very closely. I recall President Obama flew over to Germany to convince Merkel to run for a fourth term. What is Washington now looking for here?
Well, I think Washington is definitely looking for a strong transatlantic partner. Washington recognizes that Germany is sort of the de facto leader of Europe because of Brexit, also because of a weak France. There's an election next year in France. But I think, Washington will get that no matter who's chancellor.
I do want to reflect a little on the legacy of outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel. You've been in the Berlin office there for 10 years now, and you've seen how she's dealt with a number of huge crises, including keeping Germany's borders open to migrants, protecting the euro, pushing for this EU pandemic relief scheme. Is there concern about what happens after her when it comes to the continent?
Well, I mean, certainly Angela Merkel will go down in the history books no matter what, simply because she was Germany's first female chancellor. She was Germany's first chancellor from the former East Germany. And she may actually be Germany's longest serving chancellor if it takes a long time for there to be a coalition in Berlin. So those are going to be, certainly records that she will hold. But I think there is also a generational change in Germany after 16 years at the helm. Voters were very nervous. I mean, just a week ago, there was a poll that said that 40% of voters were undecided about who they should vote for or which party they should vote for. So certainly there is a generational shift here in Germany. But I think both chancellor candidates are going to be also somewhat status quo candidates, but Germany is also facing a lot of challenges that Angela Merkel certainly managed through. She's been the consummate crisis manager, but hasn't necessarily made decisions to prepare for the future.
Sudha, you mentioned Angela Merkel's female leadership. We are now also looking potentially at these two strong male contenders for Chancellor after 16 years of a woman in charge. Has Merkel's leadership, do you think, changed perceptions of women in power, both in Germany and more broadly?
Well, I mean, so she certainly made her mark within Germany and within on the global stage, right? I mean, it's basically not taking. I mean, it's not a big deal for a female to head the country. For many young girls growing up in Germany, that's all they've seen for their life. And she has increased, certainly women are certainly present in the labor force in Germany, but they're also present part-time. So although she is a female chancellor, I'm not sure one can say that the balance sheet has been positive in terms of the role of women here in Germany, in terms of sitting on boards or actually holding leadership positions throughout society.
Sudha, you mentioned this generational shift here. Now, arguably, one of the things that Merkel did was to bring her party much closer to the centre. So now we're really looking at this centre-right party and a centre-left party vying for leadership. So given the men who are potentially likely to take charge, do you actually expect to see a dramatic policy shift in the country, particularly if the SPD takes charge?
Well, I mean, look, Chancellor Merkel has been very successful at governing from the center. She's been an effective winner for the CDU, but at the same time, she's perhaps diluted what it means to be a conservative in Germany. And that's why you saw the growth of the far-right AfD during her tenure. And I think, both of these parties now, the CDU and the SPD, need to look to their future in terms of can they be called a catch-all party? If you look at the projections right now, both parties just got a quarter of the vote here, whereas 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they were getting well above 30%. So, what is the future of the catch-all party, the center-left and the center-right? And in terms of what comes next, I think the question will be, how much more government intervention does Germany want? How much more spending? How much more tax increases? And also, what kind of Europe does Germany want? Does Germany want more cohesion within Europe, and that's been a very important pillar for German foreign and security policy. But it's a question about what Germans want for their country and for Europe.
Sudha David-Wilp there, the Deputy Director of the Berlin office at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Really great to get your thoughts on Al Jazeera. Thank you for joining us, Sudha.